Standing in the ruins of Mohenjo-daro, you can almost hear the whispers of a civilization lost to time. These crumbling brick walls, these silent streets, were once the heart of a society so advanced, so sophisticated, that it rivaled ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Yet, unlike those famous cultures, the Indus Valley Civilization remains one of history's greatest enigmas, a puzzle with pieces scattered across 4,000 years. What happened to these people? Why did their cities, meticulously planned with grid-like streets and advanced drainage systems, vanish without a trace? And perhaps most haunting of all, why can't we read their words? This isn't just a story of forgotten ruins. It's a mystery that defies explanation, a riddle wrapped in the sands of modern-day Pakistan and India. We're talking about a civilization that flourished while the pyramids were still being built, a culture that traded across vast distances, worshipped unknown gods, and then poof, disappeared, leaving behind no monuments to their kings, no grand tales of conquest. Just silence, and that silence is deafening, because for every answer archaeologists uncover, a dozen new questions emerge. Why did they build cities that seemed immune to social inequality? How did they maintain such astonishing hygiene standards when much of the world still lived in chaos? And what catastrophic event or series of events wiped them off the map so completely? Today, we're peeling back the layers of time to uncover 30 forgotten mysteries of the Indus Valley Civilization. From their undeciphered script, a code that has stumped linguists for over a century, to the eerie absence of palaces or temples in their cities, we're diving deep into the shadows of history. You'll discover how their sudden disappearance might hold clues to modern-day climate crises, why some believe they had contact with extraterrestrial beings, and what their meticulously engineered cities reveal about human ingenuity. This isn't just a journey into the past, it's a detective story, a treasure hunt, and a revelation all rolled into one. So let's step into the unknown together, because the secrets of the Indus Valley are waiting. Among one of the most baffling structures left behind by the Indus Valley people is the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro, a massive, watertight pool built with precision that would impress modern engineers. Picture this, a rectangular tank nearly 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and almost 3 meters deep, lined with layers of tightly fitted bricks and sealed with natural tar to prevent leaks. This wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, complete with a complex drainage system that could empty and refill the bath with startling efficiency. But here's the real mystery. What on earth was it for? Archaeologists have debated this for decades. Some argue it was a sacred space for ritual purification, a place where the spiritually significant act of bathing connected people to their gods. After all, water has always held deep religious meaning across ancient cultures, from the Ganges to the Nile. Others suggest it might have been an elite gathering spot, a kind of Bronze Age country club where the powerful lounged and socialized. Then there's the more practical theory. Could it have been an early public health measure? The Indus cities were obsessed with cleanliness, boasting some of the world's first sewage systems. Maybe the Great Bath was less about spirituality and more about communal hygiene. But the strangest part, unlike other ancient civilizations, the Indus Valley left no grand temples or statues of deities near the bath. No inscriptions, no carvings hinting at its purpose, just silent, meticulous brickwork. That drainage system is another clue, engineered so precisely that it suggests water wasn't just stored here, it was controlled, circulated, maybe even symbolically transformed. Could this have been the heart of a water-worshipping cult lost to time? Or was it something even more unexpected? The answers might lie in the way the bath's design mirrors the civilization itself, advanced, enigmatic, and utterly unlike anything else from its era. Every theory only deepens the intrigue. Walking through the ruins of Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, you'll notice something startling, or rather, the absence of something. Unlike ancient Egypt with its towering pyramids, or Mesopotamia with its ziggurats reaching for the heavens, the Indus Valley cities show no obvious temples, no grand altars, no colossal statues of gods. This absence is one of archaeology's most persistent puzzles. Where did these people worship? Did they even have gods, or is the evidence hiding in plain sight, waiting to be reinterpreted? Some scholars argue the civilization might have practiced open-air worship, gathering in courtyards or along riverbanks rather than constructing permanent shrines. Think of it like this: modern Hindus still perform rituals by sacred rivers without needing temples. Could the Indus people have followed a similar tradition, leaving no stone structures behind? Others point to the elevated citadel areas found in many cities. These raised platforms, like the one in Mohenjo-daro, could have served as ceremonial spaces, their wooden or temporary structures long since vanished. After all, 4,000 years of floods and silt could easily erase less durable materials. Then there's the tantalizing possibility that the Indus River itself swallowed their sacred sites. Satellite imagery shows ancient river channels shifting dramatically over millennia. What if major religious centers now lie buried under tons of sediment, preserved but invisible? Recent discoveries of fire altars and ritual bathing platforms at smaller sites hint that worship might have been decentralized, a network of small household shrines instead of monumental temples. The real twist: some artifacts suggest they venerated a horned figure, possibly an early prototype of the Hindu god Shiva. A famous seal depicts a cross-legged figure surrounded by animals, eerily resembling later depictions of Shiva as Lord of the Beasts. But without inscriptions or clearer context, we're left guessing. Were they proto-Hindus, or did they worship forces of nature, their rituals leaving no trace beyond cryptic symbols? The silence of their cities speaks volumes, not about absence, but about how much we still don't understand. This isn't just a gap in the archaeological record. It's a window into how differently ancient societies organized their spiritual lives. While the Egyptians built tombs for eternity, the Indus people might have sought the divine in flowing water and open skies. Their missing temples aren't an oversight, they're a challenge. A reminder that not all civilizations leave their mark in stone. Some leave it in the very absence we struggle to explain. What makes the Indus Valley Civilization truly extraordinary isn't just their advanced cities. It's how eerily similar those cities were, spread across vast distances. From the towering citadel of Mohenjo-daro in modern-day Pakistan to the smaller settlements near India's Ganges Plain, separated by over 1,500 kilometers, these people built with the same precision, the same materials, even the same measurements. Imagine if every town in Europe, from Paris to Moscow, used identical bricks, identical street widths, and identical bathroom designs, with no modern technology to coordinate it. That's the level of uniformity we're talking about. Take their bricks, for example. Every excavated city reveals baked clay bricks with the same exact proportions, a ratio of 4:2:1 in length, width, and thickness. Not roughly similar, identical, like they'd been stamped from a single mold. Even more astonishing, the bricks from a small outpost hundreds of kilometers away match those in the grandest cities down to the millimeter. This wasn't accidental. It points to either a rigid central authority enforcing standards or a shared cultural blueprint so deeply ingrained that distant communities adhered to it without question. Then there's the layout. Walk through the ruins of Harappa, Kalibangan, or Lothal, and you'll see the same grid-pattern streets, the same north-south orientation, the same division between residential blocks and raised citadels. Even their drainage systems mirror each other, carefully sloped channels running alongside streets, covered with stone slabs for easy cleaning. Such coordination across vast territories would be impressive today with satellite imaging and digital communication. How did they achieve it 4,000 years ago? The mystery deepens with their weights and measures. Archaeologists have dug up tiny stone cubes across Indus sites, their standardized weight system. These cubes follow a precise unit called the Indus inch, with smaller weights neatly doubling or halving in increments. Traders from distant cities could trust that a 10-unit weight in one settlement meant the same in another. No haggling over measurements, no confusion. This level of economic harmony suggests either an incredibly efficient bureaucratic system or a cultural consensus so strong it transcended local differences. But here's the twist. We've found no evidence of an all-powerful king, no imperial palace, no Chinese letter records boasting of centralized control. Unlike Egypt's pharaohs or Mesopotamia's Lugals, the Indus elites, if they existed, left no grandiose statues or victory stelae. So was this uniformity achieved through coercion or cooperation? Some researchers propose a network of city-states sharing ideas freely, like ancient versions of modern trade alliances. Others wonder if a shared spiritual belief system drove the conformity, with builders seeing standardized designs as sacred geometry, the most haunting possibility. We might be missing the very tools that made this coordination possible. What if the Indus people had a sophisticated communication method, a perishable technology like written scrolls or wooden tally systems that rotted away? Their undeciphered script appears mostly on seals and amulets, but what if mundane records once existed on materials that didn't survive the millennia? Until we crack their writing, we're left staring at the architectural fingerprints of a system we can't quite reconstruct. A civilization that mastered synchronization on a continental scale, then took the secret of how they did it to their graves. This uniformity isn't just about bricks and streets. It's a silent challenge to our assumptions about how ancient societies organized themselves. Without emperors or monuments to ego, the Indus Valley achieved something perhaps more remarkable, a consensus of precision that outlasted its creators. Their cities whisper of a world where order wasn't imposed from above but woven into the very fabric of daily life. The real question isn't just how they did it, but why no one else in the ancient world came close. Among the countless artifacts unearthed from the Indus Valley, one small bronze figure stands apart not for its size, but for the sheer life radiating from its delicate form. Known as the Dancing Girl, this 11-centimeter tall statue discovered in Mohenjo-daro captures a moment frozen in time. A young woman caught mid-movement, her weight shifted onto one hip, her arms defiantly akimbo. Archaeologists dated her to approximately 2500 BCE, making her one of the earliest lost wax bronze castings in human history. But what truly astonishes isn't just her craftsmanship, it's her audacity. Unlike the rigid, formal art of Egypt or Mesopotamia, this figure pulses with personality. Her slightly oversized hands, elongated limbs, and exaggerated posture suggest either artistic stylization or a deliberate cultural statement. Look closer and the mysteries multiply. Her ornaments, a choker, multiple bangles, and an elaborate headband hint at a society with advanced metallurgy and a love of adornment. But who was she modeling? Some scholars argue her confident stance and jewelry mark her as a temple dancer, a Devadasi-like figure performing sacred rituals. Others see a high-status woman, perhaps even a priestess, frozen in a moment of ceremonial dance. Then there's the provocative theory linking her to Mesopotamia. Strikingly similar bronze figurines of worshippers have been found in ancient Sumer, complete with the same oversized eyes and sinuous poses. Could the Dancing Girl be evidence of deep cultural exchange across the Indus and Tigris-Euphrates? Or did both civilizations independently arrive at this artistic style? The debate takes a fascinating turn when examining her proportions. Her elongated arms and legs don't match the more naturalistic seals found at Indus sites. This has led some researchers to propose she might represent a deity, an early proto-Shiva or mother goddess depicted with supernatural features. Alternatively, her exaggerated limbs could symbolize dance movements, much like how modern comic artists stretch figures to imply motion. The truth might lie in the materials themselves. The bronze used contains a higher tin percentage than typical Indus artifacts, suggesting either a specialized workshop or an import from distant regions. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't who she was, but why she's alone. No other bronze human figures of this quality have been found in the Indus Valley. Was she part of a larger collection lost to time, a diplomatic gift from a foreign ruler, or did a creator capture something fleeting, a street performer's momentary grace, immortalized in metal because it moved an anonymous artist 4 millennia ago? The dancing girl refuses to be categorized. She's at once an artistic triumph, a historical enigma, and a silent challenger to our assumptions about ancient women's roles. In her poised defiance, she bridges the gap between past and present, reminding us that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only admired. Discovered in the ruins of Mohenjo-daro, the Pashupati seal might be the most hotly debated artifact from the Indus Valley. This tiny, square stamp, just 3 centimeters across, depicts a figure seated cross-legged, crowned with massive horns, surrounded by 4 wild animals. At first glance, it looks almost like a snapshot from 4,000 years ago, a holy man in deep meditation, or perhaps a deity holding court with the beasts of the earth. But the moment you dig deeper, the certainties dissolve into a web of conflicting theories, each more fascinating than the last. Some scholars see this as the earliest known depiction of a yogi. The figure's posture mirrors the lotus position used in Hindu and Buddhist meditation today. His apparent trance-like state suggests spiritual practices astonishingly similar to those still followed millennia later. Could this be evidence that yoga's roots stretch back to the dawn of urban civilization? Others go further, arguing the horned figure represents an early prototype of Shiva, specifically his ancient avatar Pashupati, lord of the animals. In later Hindu tradition, Shiva is often shown seated just like this, with serpents and tigers as his companions. The parallels are uncanny, raising profound questions about cultural continuity across the ages. But not everyone agrees. Skeptics point out that the seal lacks any inscriptions to confirm the figure's identity. Could this instead depict a shaman or tribal elder wearing ceremonial horns? In many early cultures, antler headdresses symbolized a connection to the spirit world. The surrounding animals, a rhino, elephant, tiger, and buffalo, might represent clan totems rather than divine attendants. Then there's the radical theory that the figure isn't human at all. Some researchers note the figure's exaggerated, almost triangular torso and suggest it could be a therianthrope, a mythical hybrid of man and beast. The controversy takes a surprising turn when you examine similar artifacts from other ancient civilizations. Seals from Mesopotamia show horned deities associated with fertility and wilderness. Could the Pashupati figure reflect a shared religious idea across early cultures? Or is this a uniquely Indus Valley vision of power where spirituality, nature, and authority intertwine? What makes this seal truly extraordinary isn't just the questions it raises, but what it reveals about the Indus people's worldview. Unlike Egyptian gods depicted in rigid, formal poses, this figure pulses with dynamism as if caught mid-ritual. The animals aren't passive decorations, they seem to engage with the central figure, creating a scene bursting with symbolic energy. Whether it's a god, a holy man, or something else entirely, the seal offers a rare glimpse into a spiritual landscape where humanity and nature weren't separate realms but parts of a single sacred whole. The longer you stare at the Pashupati seal, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just an artifact, it's a mirror. Every interpretation reflects not just ancient beliefs, but our own modern desires to find familiar patterns in the distant past. Maybe that's the real mystery here, not who the figure represents, but why we're so determined to fit it into categories it might never have been meant to occupy. Buried beneath the soil of modern-day Gujarat lies one of the Indus Valley's most astonishing achievements, the ancient dockyard of Lothal. This massive brick-lined basin, measuring an impressive 219 meters long and 37 meters wide, wasn't just a pool of water. It was a meticulously engineered maritime hub, the world's earliest known dock. Picture a structure so advanced that its walls were reinforced with baked bricks to withstand tidal currents, while a sophisticated sluice gate system controlled water flow with precision. This wasn't just a place to moor boats, it was a Bronze Age marvel of hydraulics, a testament to a civilization that mastered the sea when others were still clinging to riverbanks. But here's where the mystery deepens. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence that Lothal sailors traded across staggering distances, with Indus seals found as far away as Mesopotamia. What kind of ships made these voyages possible? The absence of any surviving vessels has left researchers piecing together clues from terracotta models and seal carvings. These depictions suggest broad, flat-bottomed boats with high prows designs stable enough for open water travel yet shallow enough to navigate the Indus Delta. Some models even show sails, hinting at wind-powered journeys covering thousands of kilometers. Could these have been the container ships of their day, laden with ivory, cotton, and precious stones? The dockyard's design only amplifies the intrigue. Unlike natural harbors, Lothal's basin was dug inland, connected to the Sabarmati River via a 3-kilometer-long channel. This artificial setup suggests an understanding of tidal patterns, allowing ships to enter and exit with the rising and falling waters. Even more remarkable, the dock's floor slopes subtly toward a central channel, ensuring silt would wash away naturally, a self-cleaning feature modern ports would envy. Yet for all its ingenuity, Lothal's maritime legacy raises haunting questions. Why have no shipwrecks been found? Was their wood too perishable to survive 4 millennia? Or did the Indus people recycle vessels beyond recognition? The dock itself bears scars of catastrophe, silt layers hinting at floods or tsunamis that might have devastated the city. Could a single disaster have erased not just a port, but an entire seafaring tradition? The dockyard's true significance might lie in what it reveals about the Indus Valley's worldview. While Egypt and Mesopotamia turned inward, building pyramids and ziggurats to the heavens, Lothal's people looked outward, to horizons where trade and technology connected distant worlds. Their silent bricks whisper of a civilization not bound by land, but by the restless sea, its secrets still drifting beyond our reach. The ruins of the Indus Valley hold a startling secret, one that defies everything we know about ancient civilizations. While Egypt's pharaohs erected monuments to their conquests, and Mesopotamian kings boasted of vanquished enemies on clay tablets, the Indus people left behind no trace of war. No swords, no shields, no grand murals of battle, not a single depiction of violence across thousands of excavated artifacts. For a civilization that thrived for nearly 1,000 years, this absence isn't just unusual, it's unprecedented. Walk through their cities and you'll find something remarkable. No fortifications, no towering walls built to repel invaders, no arrowheads stockpiled in armories. Even their art tells a peaceful story. While other ancient cultures carved scenes of prisoners bound in chains or gods smiting foes, Indus seals showed dancing figures, grazing animals, and scenes of harvest. The closest thing to a weapon archaeologists have uncovered: a handful of copper knives, tools more likely used for cutting rope or meat than for combat. This wasn't a society prepared for war, it was one that might have rejected it entirely. How could a civilization flourish in an era when conflict was the norm? One theory suggests their geographic isolation played a role. Nestled between the Himalayas and the Arabian Sea, with the Thar Desert as a buffer, the Indus Valley might have been naturally shielded from invaders. But that doesn't explain the complete lack of internal strife. Unlike Mesopotamia's warring city-states, Indus settlements show no signs of raised buildings or mass graves, no evidence that rival cities ever clashed. Another possibility is even more radical. What if they developed a culture of cooperation so strong it made warfare obsolete? Their standardized weights, uniform city layouts, and shared engineering techniques hint at a society that prioritized harmony over hierarchy. While Egypt's rulers enslaved thousands to build pyramids, the Indus people might have achieved monumental construction through collective labor, voluntary collaboration rather than forced servitude. Some researchers point to their water management systems as proof. Maintaining complex drainage networks across vast territories would have required constant coordination, not competition. But here's the twist that keeps archaeologists awake at night. Could we be missing something? What if their weapons were made of perishable materials, wooden spears or leather armor that decayed over millennia? Or perhaps their defenses were so advanced they left no trace. The citadels found in cities like Mohenjo-daro, with their elevated positions, might have served as flood barriers or as lookout points against unseen threats. The most haunting theory of all, that their peace wasn't a choice but a consequence. Recent climate studies suggest the Indus Valley might have collapsed under shifting monsoons and drying rivers. If resources grew scarce, did their society unravel without a military tradition to fall back on? The absence of war artifacts could be a silent testament not to utopia but to vulnerability, a civilization that, when crisis came, had no way to fight back. This isn't just an archaeological curiosity, it's a mirror held up to our own world. In an age of endless conflict, the Indus Valley whispers an uncomfortable question. What does it mean to build a society where war isn't just avoided but never even imagined? Their empty armories challenge us to reconsider what we assume about human nature. Perhaps they weren't naive, perhaps they were millennia ahead of their time. Digging through the ruins of Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, you'll stumble upon small, unassuming objects that reveal one of the Indus Valley's most astonishing secrets. A system of weights so precise, so meticulously standardized, it would put modern laboratories to shame. These polished stone cubes, ranging from the size of a chickpea to a grapefruit, aren't random artifacts. They're the foundation of an entire economic universe, built on a mathematical elegance that still resonates today. Take one of these weights in your hand, say, the smallest unit at just under 3 grams, and you're holding a key to understanding how an ancient civilization conducted trade across continents. Archaeologists have found these weights scattered from the coast of Oman to the foothills of the Himalayas, all following the same exact standard. But here's what's truly mind-bending. They don't follow the base 10 system we use today. Instead, they multiply in increments of 16. A 1-unit weight jumps to 16 units, then 256 units, and so on, a pattern some researchers link to the way ancient Indians later divided metals and grain. Could this be the earliest known ancestor of India's traditional tola measurement? The precision is staggering. These weights were calibrated to within 1% accuracy, with no variation between cities separated by hundreds of kilometers. Imagine every grocery scale in every supermarket across a country today giving identical measurements without digital technology or centralized oversight. This suggests either an authoritarian regime enforcing strict standards or a society so deeply committed to fairness in trade that uniformity became cultural instinct. But the real mystery isn't just how they achieved this consistency, it's why they chose 16 as their sacred number. Some theorists see cosmic significance. 16 is the square of 4, a number revered in Vedic traditions as representing completeness. Others propose a practical explanation. 16 could be divided easily into halves, quarters, and eighths, making marketplace transactions fluid. There's even a tantalizing connection to the human body. Certain Indus weights align eerily with the mass of ancient Harappan seeds or beads, hinting at a measurement system rooted in daily life. Yet for all their sophistication, these weights deepen the civilization's central enigma. Unlike Mesopotamian merchants who left detailed cuneiform receipts, the Indus people recorded no transactional text. Their weights speak a silent language of perfect harmony, a numerical code we can measure but not fully decipher. Were they tools of an elite merchant class? Sacred objects imbued with spiritual meaning, or fragments of a lost scientific tradition that viewed numbers as bridges between Earth and cosmos? One thing is certain, these unremarkable-looking stones are anything but ordinary. They're proof that 4 millennia ago, in a world without calculators or global standards, humanity had already grasped the power of numbers to create order from chaos. The Indus weights don't just measure mass, they measure the boundless ingenuity of a civilization that turned mathematics into an art form. Among the thousands of artifacts unearthed from the Indus Valley, nothing captures the imagination quite like the so-called unicorn seals, small, square stamps depicting a mysterious creature that looks part bull, part mythological beast. These seals, numbering in the thousands across multiple cities, show a sturdy, bovine-like animal with a single, curved horn protruding from its forehead. At first glance, you might assume these were simple trade markers or decorative items, but the sheer quantity and consistency of these seals suggest something far more profound, a symbol so important it was woven into the very fabric of Indus identity. What's striking isn't just how often these unicorns appear, but how little they vary. Whether found in the workshops of Harappan or the storerooms of Mohenjo-daro, the creature is always shown in profile, often standing before a ritualistic object that resembles a feeding trough or incense burner. The precision is uncanny down to the positioning of the horn, the arch of the neck, even the occasional decorative blanket draped over its back. This wasn't casual artistry, it was deliberate repetition, as if the image held some sacred or societal meaning too vital to alter. So what exactly are we looking at? Some researchers argue the unicorn was a real, now extinct animal, perhaps a stylized representation of an aurochs, the wild ancestor of modern cattle, with artistic license exaggerating its single horn. Others propose it might depict a surviving species like the Indian rhinoceros, whose single horn could have inspired the myth. But there's a catch. Rhinos don't appear elsewhere in Indus art, and their body shape doesn't match the seals. That's led to more speculative theories. Could this be evidence of ancient cross-cultural exchange? Mesopotamian texts mention a distant land called Meluha, believed to be the Indus Valley where exotic creatures roamed. Was the unicorn seal a branding tool, a way for Indus merchants to signal their faraway origins to foreign buyers? Then there's the spiritual interpretation. Unlike the animal seals of Mesopotamia, which often show hunting scenes, the Indus unicorn is almost always stationary, calm, composed, almost regal. The ritual object in front of it suggests a ceremonial context. Some scholars see parallels with later Hindu and Buddhist traditions where bulls symbolize divine power or cosmic order. Could this creature be an early prototype of Nandi, Shiva's sacred bull? Or perhaps a guardian spirit, its horn not just a physical trait but a marker of supernatural strength. The most tantalizing theory connects the unicorn to Indus social structure. Nearly 40% of all seals found bear this image, far too many to represent a single elite group. Instead, they might denote clan affiliations like a Bronze Age family crest. Think of it like medieval heraldry where lions or eagles signaled lineage or profession. If each city had multiple clans, the unicorn could have been a shared emblem, uniting diverse groups under a common symbol while subtle variations in posture or adornment distinguished individual families. Yet for all the speculation, one truth remains: the unicorn seals resist easy classification. They're at once artistic, economic, and possibly spiritual, a trifecta of meaning we're still struggling to untangle. Their very persistence across centuries of Indus culture hints at something foundational, a symbol so deeply ingrained that its original meaning might have been second nature to the people who carved it. That's the real enigma here, not whether the unicorn was real or mythical, but why it mattered so profoundly to a civilization that left us no words to explain it. Step into any home in Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, and you'd find something that would shock most ancient civilizations: a private bathroom. Not a communal latrine or a ditch outside, but an actual dedicated washing space inside nearly every house, complete with a brick-lined floor, efficient drainage, and even a rudimentary shower area. This wasn't luxury, it was standard. While contemporaries like the Egyptians were still hauling water from the Nile in jars, the Indus people had engineered something extraordinary: a city-wide hydraulic system rivaling modern infrastructure. The real marvel lies beneath the streets. A labyrinth of precisely laid clay pipes and covered drains ran under every neighborhood, channeling wastewater away from homes and into larger sewage mains. These weren't just ditches, they were carefully sloped to ensure gravity did the work, with strategic access points for cleaning, a sanitation network so advanced that Europe wouldn't see its equal for another 3,000 years. But how did they maintain it? The answer might lie in their obsession with geometry. Every drain, every well, every bath was built to exact ratios, ensuring water flowed at optimal speeds to prevent stagnation or blockages. Even their wells weren't just holes in the ground, they were cylindrical masterpieces of baked brick, designed to resist collapse and contamination. Then there's the mystery of supply. Unlike Rome's aqueducts, which relied on massive stone construction, the Indus system was subtle. Houses clustered around centralized wells, suggesting a shared resource model, yet each residence had independent access. Some structures even hint at rooftop rainwater harvesting, with terraces angled to funnel water into storage jars. But the most puzzling feature, the absence of obvious leadership. With no evidence of a ruling class forcing labor, this hygiene revolution appears to have been communal, a society-wide commitment to cleanliness as a shared value rather than an imposed order. Was this perfection their downfall? Some researchers speculate that maintaining such intricate systems may have strained the civilization when climate shifts disrupted water supplies. A network this precise relies on predictability, something the shifting Indus River ultimately couldn't guarantee. Yet for centuries, these engineers achieved something almost magical, turning the most basic human necessity into an act of collective genius. Their silent pipes whisper a radical idea that advanced civilization isn't about monuments to the elite, but about the dignity of daily life for all. The skeletal remains found at Cemetery H in modern-day Punjab tell a hauntingly different story from the orderly graves of earlier Indus cities. Unearthed in the 1920s, these graves date to around 1900 BCE, just as the great urban centers of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were declining. But instead of the standardized east-west-oriented burials typical of Indus tradition, these bodies were interred in pots, some charred as if ritually burned, others stacked with multiple skeletons in a single jar. Here was a culture that seemed to emerge from the ashes of collapse, preserving fragments of the past while introducing practices utterly alien to the civilization that came before. What makes Cemetery H so unsettling isn't just the eccentric burials, it's what they represent. The pot burials themselves suggest a radical departure from Indus norms. Earlier Harappans buried their dead in wooden coffins or directly in the earth, often with grave goods like pottery and jewelry. But these later remains were fragmented, disarticulated, sometimes bearing cut marks that hint at excarnation, the deliberate removal of flesh before burial. Was this the influence of new migrants from Central Asia, bringing their own death rites into the region, or a traumatized local population reimagining tradition as their world unraveled? The pottery offers another clue. While earlier Indus ceramics featured geometric patterns and animal motifs, Cemetery H is dominated by bold, almost surreal paintings of elongated human figures with almond-shaped eyes, their arms outstretched as if in ritual dance or mourning. Some vessels show scenes that archaeologists interpret as funerary processions, with stick-figure mourners accompanying the dead. The style bears striking similarities to contemporary cultures in Balochistan and Afghanistan, fueling theories of westward cultural exchange during the civilization's twilight. But the most provocative evidence comes from the bones themselves. Isotopic analysis reveals that some individuals buried at Cemetery H had diets rich in millet, a crop more associated with the Gangetic Plain than the wheat and barley-heavy Indus Valley. This could point to migration from the east, perhaps displaced groups fleeing climate upheaval. Yet other skeletons show cranial features suggesting possible Central Asian ancestry, aligning with the controversial Aryan migration hypothesis. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a mosaic of peoples and practices emerging from the breakdown of a once unified system. Perhaps the deepest mystery isn't who these people were, but what they remembered. Amid the strangeness, traces of continuity persist. A handful of graves contain classic Indus seals, carefully placed beside the dead as if to honor a fading legacy. The famous horned deity motif appears on some pottery, now abstracted into a barely recognizable silhouette. It's as if Cemetery H represents not a clean break, but a conversation between collapse and survival, a culture grappling with how much to hold onto and how much to let go. This isn't just an archaeological puzzle, it's a window into how civilizations transform under pressure. The people of Cemetery H didn't vanish, they adapted, blending old and new in ways we're only beginning to decipher. Their fragmented bones and painted pots whisper of resilience, proof that even in the shadow of collapse, humanity finds ways to reinvent its rituals, its art, its very sense of meaning. Around 2100 BC, something shifted in the winds over the Indus Valley, not just metaphorically but literally. Geological cores drilled from the region's ancient riverbeds tell a story of monsoons that grew unpredictable, of mighty waterways like the Gagga-Hakra believed by some to be the mythical Saraswati River, drying up or changing course catastrophically. Here's what makes this evidence so compelling. Layers of silt suddenly give way to fine, wind-blown sand, a telltale sign that flowing water gave way to desertification. Satellite imagery reveals the ghostly outlines of abandoned river channels, their paths etched into the earth like scars. Yet the climate theory, while persuasive, raises its own enigmas. Take the city of Dolavira, perched on an island in what's now the Rann of Kutch. While other urban centers declined, Dolavira thrived, constructing massive reservoirs to capture every precious drop of rainfall. Their survival suggests some communities anticipated the crisis, adapting with stunning ingenuity. Meanwhile, coastal settlements like Lothal show layers of silt consistent with violent flooding, proof that climate chaos wasn't uniform. Some regions baked under drought, others drowned. The real puzzle lies in the timeline. Sediment studies indicate the Gagga-Hakra's flow dwindled gradually over centuries, yet archaeological layers at Mohenjo-daro reveal something startling. The city wasn't slowly abandoned, it was meticulously maintained until the very end. Streets were repaired, drains cleaned, new bricks fired, then abruptly silence. No mass graves, no signs of violent overthrow, just empty streets where the last inhabitant simply walked away. This inconsistency has led some researchers to propose a cascading collapse. Imagine a civilization networked like a circuit board. When the primary rivers failed, trade routes short-circuited. Cities reliant on grain from upriver starved, while those with local water sources clung on. Recent studies of ancient wheat remnants support this. Samples from late-period Harappa show shriveled grains crops stunted by saline soil as groundwater evaporated. But dig at Rakhigarhi, just a few hundred kilometers east, and you'll find plump, healthy grains from the same era. The most haunting possibility, the Indus people might have been victims of their own success. Their hyper-specialized cities, so perfectly adapted to stable conditions, became brittle when the environment shifted. Like a master chess player suddenly handed a new set of rules, their strategies no longer applied. Meanwhile, smaller villages with flexible farming practices weathered the storm, their stories lost to time because they left fewer ruins to excavate. Perhaps climate change wasn't the sole executioner, but the spark that ignited a chain reaction. Without water to sustain their intricate urban ecosystems, the social contracts binding the civilization may have unraveled. People didn't vanish, they dispersed, carrying fragments of their culture into the hills and forests where the rain still fell. The mystery isn't just why some cities fell, but why we insist on seeing collapse as an event when it might have been a transformation too subtle for archaeology to easily trace. Among the most evocative artifacts emerging from Indus Valley excavations are the hundreds of small, handmade clay figurines depicting women, some bare-breasted with exaggerated hips, others adorned with intricate headdresses and jewelry. These earthy, often crudely sculpted figures have sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. Were they sacred objects of a matriarchal religion, everyday toys, or something else entirely? Unlike the refined stone statues of ancient Greece or Egypt, these clay women feel startlingly immediate, as if their creators shaped them quickly between daily tasks. But their simplicity is deceptive. Each one holds clues to understanding a society that left no written explanation of its beliefs. The mother goddess theory gained early traction among researchers. Many figurines emphasize fertility, features wide hips, prominent breasts, sometimes even explicit genitalia, echoing Neolithic fertility idols found across prehistoric Europe and the Near East. Some show women holding infants or pressing hands to their bellies, postures that mirror later Hindu depictions of the earth goddess Prithvi. At sites like Mohenjo-daro, clusters of these figures were found near what appear to be household shrines, suggesting domestic worship. But challenges to this interpretation emerged when archaeologists noticed something peculiar. The vast majority were discovered broken, often in trash heaps rather than reverential context. Were these objects of veneration or discarded playthings? Another camp argues the figurines reflect social rather than religious realities. Anthropologist Shari Clark's microscopic analysis revealed something telling. The clay bears fingerprints of multiple creators, including children's hands. This raises the possibility that figurine making was a shared activity, perhaps teaching young girls domestic skills or serving as rudimentary dolls. The variety in quality supports this. Some show meticulous detailing, while others look hastily pinched together. Yet even this practical explanation hits a snag. Why would a civilization with such standardized city planning produce such wildly inconsistent domestic objects? Then there's the economic angle. Excavations at Harappa's craft quarters uncovered figurine molds, implying mass production. Chemical testing shows some were fired at higher temperatures than ordinary pottery, a deliberate choice suggesting special significance. Trade patterns add another layer. While most figurines stayed local, a few traveled as far as Mesopotamia, where similar female images symbolized the goddess Ishtar. Could these have been sacred exports or merely exotic curiosities? The truth may be messier and more fascinating than any single theory. Some figurines wear elaborate horned headdresses resembling the Pashupati seal's deity, hinting at ritual roles. Others clutch drums, evoking later Hindu traditions where women musicians channeled divine energy. Most perplexing are the rare dual-gender figures with both breasts and phallic elements, challenging our binary views of ancient gender norms. What emerges isn't a neat answer, but a revelation about the Indus people's complexity. Their figurines refuse categorization because they likely served multiple purposes: sacred and mundane, communal and personal. In their diversity, they mirror a civilization comfortable with contradictions, where the spiritual and everyday might have intertwined seamlessly. These unassuming clay women, once dismissed as primitive art, turn out to be some of the most eloquent voices from the past if we're willing to listen without imposing our own assumptions. Their silent testimony suggests a world where divinity, play, and daily life weren't separate realms but threads in the same vibrant tapestry. High above the dusty plains of Gujarat's Rann of Kutch, perched on the island of Kodia Bet, the ruins of Dolavera guard one of the Indus Valley's most tantalizing mysteries. A massive stone slab carved with 10 oversized symbols, each nearly 40 centimeters tall. This isn't just another relic, it's what archaeologists call the Dolavera signboard, arguably the world's first known attempt at public signage. Picture a Bronze Age billboard, its characters etched with such precision and care that they've survived 4 millennia of monsoons and scorching sun. But here's what's truly astonishing. While later civilizations like the Egyptians carved hieroglyphs into tombs or monuments, this slab was mounted prominently near the city's northern gate, visible to every trader, traveler, or pilgrim entering Dolavera's meticulously planned streets. The symbols themselves are unmistakably Indus script, a sequence of characters also found on smaller seals and pottery, but their scale is unprecedented. Most Indus inscriptions fit in the palm of your hand, meant for stamping clay or marking goods. These, by contrast, were designed to be seen from a distance, their angular lines and looping curves chiseled deep into the white limestone. What urgent message needed to be broadcast so publicly? A royal proclamation, a sacred invocation, or perhaps directions to the city's famed reservoirs, engineering marvels that kept Dolavera alive in this arid landscape? The possibilities ignite the imagination, but the truth remains locked behind the script's undeciphered code. Even more intriguing is the signboard's construction. The slab isn't native to the region. It was imported from quarries over 300 kilometers away, a logistical feat that speaks volumes about its importance. The characters weren't merely scratched onto the surface, they were inset with a contrasting material, possibly a paste of powdered stone or metal, making them gleam against the pale background. Imagine sunlight hitting those inlaid symbols, transforming the sign into a dazzling beacon for approaching visitors. This wasn't just functional, it was performative, a statement of identity meant to awe outsiders and unite citizens under a shared cultural banner. Yet the signboard's true genius lies in its context. Dolavera was a city obsessed with water conservation, its reservoirs so advanced they could store monsoon rains for years. The sign's placement near the gate suggests it might have guided travelers to these life-giving pools or warned against wasting precious resources. Some researchers note that one repeating symbol resembles a jar or vessel. Could it signify water distribution rules? Others point to the sequence's rhythmic structure, proposing it might encode a poetic hymn or civic motto, much like modern city mottos etched into public spaces. Then there's the haunting question of legacy. Later Harappan sites show cruder versions of these symbols, as if the art of monumental writing was fading along with the civilization itself. The signboard stands as a high watermark of Indus communication, a fleeting moment when a society dared to carve its thoughts in stone for all to see, only for time to erase their meaning. Today, those 10 silent symbols remain as they were found, a message without a key, a voice from the past still waiting to speak. Digging through the workshops of ancient Harappa, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't have been there, piles upon piles of copper tools. Axes, chisels, fish hooks, even delicate needles, all crafted with a precision that rivaled contemporary civilizations. But here's the catch. The closest known copper mines were hundreds of kilometers away in distant Rajasthan and Afghanistan. This wasn't just a few imported trinkets. We're talking about enough copper to equip entire cities, suggesting a supply chain so vast it would make modern logistics companies envious. How did a Bronze Age civilization with no wheels, at least none that survived, organize such a staggering feat of resource extraction and distribution? The scale of production defies explanation. At sites like Lothal and Mohenjo-daro, furnaces capable of smelting hundreds of kilograms of copper ore have been unearthed, alongside crucibles and molds for mass-producing standardized tools. Chemical analysis reveals an even deeper mystery. The copper isn't uniform. Some artifacts trace to Rajasthan's Khetri mines, others to Balochistan, and a few contain trace elements pointing as far away as Oman. This wasn't haphazard trade, it was a meticulously coordinated network, with specialized settlements like Ganjwar in Rajasthan acting as processing hubs. Thousands of arrowheads and fragments found there suggest entire villages dedicated to supplying raw materials to distant urban centers, but the real puzzle lies in the transportation. Without surviving evidence of wheeled carts or pack animals, how did tons of raw ore traverse mountain passes and river valleys? The answer might lie in the very rivers that sustained the civilization. Seasonal floods could have turned the Indus and its tributaries into natural highways, with flat-bottomed boats like those depicted on seals carrying copper ingots downstream. Some researchers propose an even more radical idea, that the Indus people used perishable materials like bamboo rafts or inflated animal skins for overland transport, leaving no archaeological trace. What's startling is the uniformity of the final products. Whether excavated in Harappa or distant villages, copper blades share identical alloy ratios and crafting techniques. This points to centralized workshops with strict quality control, a Bronze Age version of industrial standardization. Recent 3D imaging of tool edges reveals another surprise. Many show signs of being recycled, hammered thin, and reworked multiple times. This wasn't just metalworking, it was an early form of sustainability, with scraps collected and reforged rather than discarded. The implications rewrite our understanding of ancient economics. Such extensive trade implies a system of credit or currency, yet no coins or financial records survive. Were transactions recorded on perishable materials like wood or cloth? Did merchants use the famous Indus seals as early contracts or receipts? The copper trail hints at something even more profound, a civilization that functioned less like a traditional kingdom and more like a decentralized network of specialized communities, bound together not by conquest but by mutual need. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't how they moved the metal but why they stopped. As the civilization declined, copper artifacts grew rarer and cruder. Some late-period tools show signs of desperation: thin, brittle blades stretched from dwindling supplies. The mines didn't vanish, the connections did. When the trade routes collapsed, so too did the intricate system that turned raw stone into gleaming metal. What remains today are silent workshops and half-finished ingots, testaments to a revolution in technology that flickered brightly, then disappeared into the sands. Walk through any excavation site of the Indus Valley, from the grand city of Mohenjo-daro to the smallest rural outpost, and you'll notice something uncanny. Every single brick is exactly the same. Not roughly similar, not approximately matching, precisely identical. Measure them, and you'll find they all share the same flawless proportions: 4 parts long, 2 parts wide, and 1 part thick. This isn't just consistency. It's a mathematical obsession that persisted for centuries across a civilization spanning over 1 million square kilometers. How did they achieve such uniformity without modern tools or centralized control? And why did this ratio matter so deeply to them? The brilliance of the 4:1 ratio reveals an advanced grasp of geometry and structural physics. Stack these bricks and they interlock with near-perfect stability, the width precisely half the length, the thickness exactly half the width. This creates a self-reinforcing pattern where weight distributes evenly, walls align effortlessly, and repairs become as simple as slotting in replacement bricks. Modern engineers have tested the design. Even by today's standards, it's remarkably efficient. But here's what's truly astonishing. There's no evidence of a ruling authority enforcing this standard. No decrees carved in stone, no bureaucratic records. Instead, it appears to have been a shared cultural norm, passed down through generations of builders like an unspoken law of the land. Deeper still, the ratio hints at a civilization that revered numbers as sacred. The 4-2-1 system mirrors the base ratios found in nature, the proportions of tree branches, the segmentation of insect bodies, even the harmonics of sound waves. Later Vedic texts would celebrate similar numerical relationships, suggesting a cultural continuity stretching back to the Indus era. Some researchers propose the bricks encoded a practical understanding of fractals, with smaller units mirroring the larger whole. Others see spiritual significance, the four directions, the duality of two, and the unity of one forming a cosmological blueprint. Yet the most practical explanation might lie in the bricks themselves. Fired at consistent temperatures with locally sourced clay, they resisted weathering far better than the sun-dried bricks used by contemporary civilizations. This durability wasn't accidental. Experiments with replica bricks show the 4-2-1 dimensions maximize heat distribution during firing, minimizing cracks or warping. The Indus people didn't just standardize their bricks, they engineered them for perfection. What's haunting is how this knowledge vanished. Later cultures in the same region, like the Mauryaans, abandoned the ratio, their brickwork growing irregular. Only in the Indus Valley do we find this obsessive harmony, a silent testament to a civilization that saw mathematics not just as a tool, but as the very language of creation. Their bricks aren't just building blocks, they're a forgotten manifesto written in clay proclaiming that order and beauty are one and the same. Among the ruins of the Indus Valley, one absence shouts louder than any artifact ever could. Nowhere amid these meticulously planned cities do we find a single palace, no grand tomb laden with treasures, not even a modest statue boasting of a king's conquests. This isn't just unusual for an ancient civilization, it's revolutionary. While Egypt's pharaohs were commissioning pyramids and Mesopotamian rulers were erecting ziggurats to the heavens, the Indus people built something far more radical, a society that might have rejected kings altogether. Take a walk through Mohenjo-daro's so-called citadel, and you'll see what archaeologists mean. This elevated area, long assumed to house elites, reveals no throne rooms, no private quarters dripping in gold, just functional structures that could as easily belong to administrators as to rulers. Even the largest homes in residential districts, while spacious, lack the ostentation of royal dwellings found elsewhere in the ancient world. No walls carved with battle scenes, no storehouses hoarding exotic imports for an elite few. Just uniform brickwork and efficient drainage systems serving all citizens alike. Theories about this anomaly range from the pragmatic to the paradigm-shifting. Some scholars propose that Indus cities were governed by merchant oligarchies, councils of traders and landowners who made decisions collectively, much like medieval Venice's republic. Others see hints of spiritual leadership, with power vested in priests or ritual specialists rather than warlords. The circular platforms found in cities like Kalibangan could have served as gathering spaces for communal debates, foreshadowing the democratic sanghas of later Indian traditions. Then there's the most radical idea: what if the Indus Valley invented early socialism? Their standardized weights, uniform city layouts, and shared infrastructure suggest a culture obsessed with equity. Unlike Egypt's pyramid builders who relied on forced labor, Indus constructions show no evidence of slaves or oppressed classes. Even their craft workshops cluster together without hierarchical separation, lapidaries working beside potters, metal workers alongside weavers. Could their governance have mirrored this horizontal organization? But the silence isn't absolute. A handful of artifacts whisper of alternative power structures. The famous priest-king statue, though tiny and unprovenanced, wears a cloak draped in a way later associated with Vedic scholars. Some seals show figures receiving offerings, hinting at ritual authority. And the very uniformity of their cities implies some form of central planning, just not one that felt the need to carve its glory in stone. The most compelling clue might lie in what they didn't build. While other civilizations wasted resources on monuments to mortal egos, the Indus people invested in sewers, wells, and granaries. Their priorities weren't just different, they were subversive. In a world where power was usually seized by the sword, they may have proven it could be stewarded by the collective, a lesson modernity is still struggling to learn. Their missing palaces aren't an oversight, they're a silent revolution. Buried deep in the archaeological layers of Mayagar, a site predating even the great Indus cities, scientists uncovered tiny, carbonized threads clinging to silver beads, threads that rewrote history. These minuscule fibers, dating back to approximately 6000 BC, reveal something astonishing. The Indus Valley people were the world's first cotton cultivators, beating Egypt and Mesopotamia by millennia. Picture this: while much of humanity still clothed itself in animal skins or rough flax, these innovators had already unlocked the secrets of turning a wild shrub into soft, breathable fabric. Yet for all their pioneering genius, not a single scrap of their actual cloth survives today. How did a civilization that clothed millions leave behind only ghostly imprints of its textile revolution? The scale of their cotton mastery was staggering. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus later marveled at wool-bearing trees in India, but the Indus people had domesticated cotton centuries earlier, selectively breeding plants for longer, stronger fibers. Soil samples from Gujarat to the Punjab show traces of cotton pollen in concentrations suggesting vast, organized fields, Bronze Age agribusiness on an industrial scale. Even more impressive, they engineered the entire production chain. Spindle whorls unearthed in homes prove they spun threads finer than modern machine-made yarns, while clay seals depict looms with intricate designs. Some seals even show figures wearing patterned tunics, suggesting they'd mastered dyeing techniques centuries before Tyrian purple or indigo became coveted elsewhere. But here's where the mystery grips you. Despite traces of dye vats and woven impressions left on pottery, every actual textile has vanished. Climate is the obvious culprit. Cotton decomposes rapidly in humid river valleys. Yet even in Egypt's arid tombs, where linen survived intact, Indus fabrics are conspicuously absent. This gap has led to wild theories. Were their textiles so valuable they were traded until they literally wore out? Or does their absence hint at something darker? Recent studies of Harappan cemetery soils revealed elevated mercury levels. Were fabrics burned in funerary rites, their ashes scattering into oblivion? The most tantalizing clues come from indirect evidence. Terracotta figurines wear what appear to be embroidered skirts and shawls, their patterns too precise to be mere artistic flourishes. Then there's the trade angle. Mesopotamian tablets mention Meluhan, likely Indus merchants bringing bright-colored cloth to Ur, suggesting exports prized enough to travel thousands of kilometers. Chemical residues on Lothal's docks include traces of madder and turmeric, possible dye ingredients shipped overseas. What makes this absence so haunting is what it conceals. Without physical samples, we can't study their weaving innovations or dye chemistry. Were their textiles the secret to their economic dominance? Did they, like later Indian calicos, spark fashion revolutions abroad? The answers might lie in the unlikeliest places. Some researchers are analyzing copper tools for microscopic fabric impressions, hoping to reconstruct lost weaving techniques one thread at a time. Others study modern Indus Delta communities still using traditional methods, searching for echoes of ancient mastery. This isn't just a story about vanished cloth. It's a reminder that some revolutions leave no monuments, just invisible threads connecting past to present. The Indus people didn't just wear cotton, they transformed it into a cultural signature, wrapping an entire civilization in fabric so ordinary, so essential, that its very ubiquity made it disappear. Their greatest innovation might have been something we still take for granted today: the unremarkable comfort of a cotton shirt woven by hands millennia gone. Some of the most cryptic Indus Valley seals aren't just miniature works of art, they might be snapshots of the Bronze Age night sky. Take the famous star seal from Mohenjo-daro, its surface etched with a circle surrounded by 6 radiating lines. At first glance, it could pass for a simple decorative motif, but tilt it under artificial light and something extraordinary emerges. The pattern aligns almost perfectly with the Pleiades constellation, as it would have appeared over the Indus Valley 4,000 years ago. This isn't an isolated example. Dozens of seals feature similar configurations: clusters of dots, intersecting lines, and animal figures positioned in ways that mirror celestial arrangements known to later Vedic astronomers. The implications are staggering. If these designs truly represent stars, they'd predate Babylon's famed astronomical tablets by centuries. Consider the bull seal, where the animal's body aligns with 7 carefully placed stars matching the outline of Taurus. Even more compelling are seals showing what appear to be anthropomorphized constellations: a dancing figure whose limbs align with Orion's belt, or a horned deity encircled by dots corresponding to Ursa Major's major stars. These aren't random scratches. The precision suggests intentional celestial mapping, but the mystery deepens when you examine their potential practical use. Many seals were found near granaries and trade goods, leading some researchers to propose they functioned as agricultural calendars. The Pleiades, for instance, marked the start of the harvest season in ancient Indian tradition, a fact recorded in later Vedic texts. Could these seals have been Bronze Age almanacs, their designs encoding planting cycles or monsoon predictions? Chemical analysis reveals something telling. Certain seals show wear patterns suggesting frequent handling around seasonal festivals. The astronomical connection takes on new dimensions when compared to later Indian cosmology. The Rigveda's nakshatra system, a lunar zodiac dividing the sky into 27 segments, bears uncanny resemblances to recurring seal motifs. One frequently depicted symbol, a fish encircled by dots, aligns precisely with the Vedic constellation Meena Pisces. Even the mysterious 3-headed animal seals find echoes in later Hindu astronomy, where 3 star systems symbolized Trimurti deities. Yet skepticism persists. Without accompanying inscriptions, we're left interpreting abstract patterns. Some scholars argue these designs could represent earthly phenomena: water ripples, grain bundles, or even early attempts at geometric art. The truth may lie in synthesis. Recent 3D modeling shows certain seal arrangements cast shadow patterns matching solstice sun angles when placed at specific Indus site latitudes. This dual function, artistic and utilitarian, would explain why celestial imagery permeated everyday objects. Perhaps most tantalizing is what these seals suggest about Indus scientific thought. They didn't just observe the stars, they integrated cosmic patterns into commerce, spirituality, and daily life. A trader stamping a clay tag with a star cluster wasn't merely decorating. He might have been invoking celestial timing for a shipment's arrival. In this light, the seals become more than administrative tools. They're fragments of a lost cosmic language, one that flowed seamlessly between the heavens and the rhythms of Earth. Their silent symbols hold a radical idea: that 4 millennia ago, humanity didn't just wonder at the stars, they wove them into the fabric of civilization itself. At the edge of Kalibangan's citadel, archaeologists uncovered a scene that shattered the peaceful image of the Indus Valley. A pit filled with skeletons, their bones tangled together as if tossed haphazardly into a shared grave. This wasn't the careful, east-west oriented burial typical of Harappan tradition. These bodies lay in disarray, some with limbs twisted at unnatural angles, others bearing strange cut marks. For a civilization renowned for its order and hygiene, the sight was jarring. What could have caused such a departure from their usual reverence for the dead? The answer might rewrite everything we think we know about the Indus people's final days. The first theory, human sacrifice, stems from the grave's proximity to what appears to be a ceremonial fire altar. 7 skeletons cluster near its base, their positioning eerily reminiscent of later Vedic rituals described in ancient texts where offerings accompanied sacred fires. But skeptics counter that no ligature marks or weapon wounds appear on the bones, making deliberate killing unlikely. Then there's the epidemic hypothesis. Soil analysis revealed unusually high levels of arsenic in the remains, hinting at possible mass poisoning from contaminated water. Could a sudden environmental disaster, like a toxic algae bloom in the Gaga River, have struck down entire families at once? The most contentious interpretation, however, involves violence. Among the jumbled skeletons, one skull shows a depression fracture consistent with a blunt weapon. A few ribs bear shallow cuts, perhaps from copper blades. These rare injuries have led some researchers to propose a horrifying scenario, that Kalibangan's final days saw conflict, whether from internal uprising or external invasion. This clashes starkly with the prevailing view of the Indus Valley as a pacifist utopia. Supporting evidence comes from the citadel's western gate, where the fortification walls were hastily reinforced with irregular bricks just before the city's abandonment, a possible last-ditch defense effort. Yet the truth may lie in synthesis. Recent re-examinations suggest these weren't simultaneous deaths, but accumulated burials over decades. The mass grave might actually be a charnel house, a designated space where bones were relocated after initial decomposition, a practice seen in other ancient cultures. The arsenic could stem from funeral rites involving mercury-rich vermilion powder, still used in Hindu death rituals today. Even the weapon wounds might reflect post-mortem processing, as some bones show scoring from flint tools possibly used in excarnation ceremonies. What lingers isn't just the mystery of how these people died, but what their resting place reveals about Indus spirituality. The body's north-south orientation aligns with the city's grid, as if even in death they mirrored the cosmic order of their urban plan. The presence of children alongside adults suggests a culture that didn't segregate its dead by status, a radical egalitarianism extending beyond the grave. Kalibangan's silent skeletons don't just whisper of catastrophe, they force us to confront the complexity of a civilization that defies easy categorization. Their tangled bones are a reminder that even the most orderly societies have shadows, and that history's darkest chapters often hide in plain sight. For centuries, the Saraswati River existed only in ancient hymns, a mythical waterway described in the Rig Veda as surpassing all other rivers in majesty, flowing from the Himalayas to the sea. Then satellite imagery revealed something extraordinary, the ghostly outline of a massive riverbed snaking through what's now the Thar Desert, its path eerily matching the sacred text. This wasn't just a poetic metaphor, it was the skeleton of a lost lifeline that might have nourished the Indus Valley at its peak, stretching the civilization's boundaries far beyond current maps. Modern remote sensing paints a vivid picture. NASA Landsat satellites detected subsurface sediment patterns indicating a once mighty river over 8 kilometers wide, with tributaries fanning out like veins across northwestern India. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the discovery, revealing layers of rounded pebbles and coarse sand, telltale signs of ancient riverbeds buried beneath dunes. When researchers overlaid these findings with archaeological sites, the correlation was undeniable. Clusters of ruins lined the Saraswati's proposed banks like beads on a string, suggesting settlements stretching hundreds of kilometers farther east than previously assumed. The implications rewrite the civilization's scale. Current excavations cover an area roughly the size of France, but the Saraswati's watershed could double that territory, connecting known urban centers like Ganwariwala and Rakhigarhi to a vast network of undiscovered settlements. Soil samples from these areas show elevated levels of mica and quartz minerals carried downstream from Himalayan glaciers, just as the Vedas described. Even more compelling, the river's abrupt disappearance around 1900 BCE aligns with the civilization's decline, as shifting tectonic plates diverted its tributaries toward the Ganges, turning fertile plains into desert. Yet controversy lingers. Some scholars argue the Saraswati label is premature, that this was simply the Gagga-Hakra, a seasonal river known to archaeologists. Others point to linguistic clues in Vedic texts where the Saraswati is called the mother of rivers, suggesting a Himalayan origin now confirmed by isotopic analysis of ancient river sediments. The most tantalizing evidence comes from marine archaeology. Underwater ruins near India's Gulf of Kutch show architectural styles identical to inland Indus sites, hinting at coastal cities now submerged, possibly the river's legendary mouth. What emerges isn't just a lost river, but a lost chapter of human ingenuity. The Saraswati's people likely engineered canals to harness its erratic flow, mirroring the Indus' famous water management. Their vanished ports may have traded with Mesopotamia, carrying goods along a vanished aquatic highway. As climate change echoes this ancient crisis, rivers shifting, cities thirsty, the Saraswati story feels unnervingly modern. Its dry bed is more than an archaeological curiosity. It's a warning etched in sand, whispering how civilizations rise and fall with the waters that sustain them. The ruins of Banawali tell a story frozen in time, not of gradual decline, but of abrupt cessation. Here, half-built walls stand like skeletal fingers reaching for a sky they'll never touch. Bricks still stacked in neat piles await hands that never returned. Ovens brim with charred grains, their last meal left uneaten. This isn't just abandonment, it's a snapshot of interruption so sudden, it's as if the entire city pressed pause mid-breath. Across the Indus Valley, from Dhalavera's unfinished reservoirs to Kalibangan's skeletal streets, these frozen moments whisper of a civilization caught in mid-step. But what catastrophe could have scattered builders so thoroughly that they didn't even return for their tools? The evidence at Banawali is particularly haunting. Archaeologists uncovered workshops filled with half-carved seals, their intricate animal motifs abandoned mid-chisel. Kilns held unfired pottery, the clay dried into permanent fragility. Most telling are the construction site's entire neighborhoods frozen in various stages of assembly, their grid plans visible like blueprints in the dust. One house had its foundation laid, bricks perfectly aligned, yet no walls ever rose. Another stood complete but empty, as if the owners vanished the day they were meant to move in. This pattern repeats across multiple layers, ruling out isolated incidents. Something systemic unraveled the social contract that sustained urban life. Theories abound, each more chilling than the last. Soil samples reveal a stark clue, a thin layer of wind-blown sand slicing through habitation layers like a knife. This suggests abrupt aridification. Perhaps the Gagga-Hakra river's flow faltered mid-construction season, turning life-giving waters to dust, but there's a wrinkle. At nearby Rakhigarhi, contemporaneous layers show no such disruption. Could this have been a localized disaster? Some researchers point to skeletal evidence, not mass graves, but scattered remains showing signs of nutritional stress. Was it famine that drove them away, or did they scatter like seeds in the wind, adapting to smaller settlements? Then there's the enigma of what they left behind. At Banawali's granaries, storage jars sit sealed, still holding their precious contents. Jewelers' hoards of carnelian beads were found tucked beneath floors, as if their owners intended to retrieve them. This isn't the behavior of people fleeing war or invasion. It's the signature of interrupted routine. The most poignant find, a child's toy cart, its tiny clay wheels forever stilled mid-roll. These aren't the relics of apocalypse, but of lives interrupted by a crisis they believed temporary. the unfinished cities force us to reconsider collapse. Perhaps the Indus Valley didn't fall in the dramatic sense. Maybe it simply scattered, its people adapting by returning to older, more resilient ways of living. Like a river changing course, their brilliance might have flowed elsewhere, leaving behind these poignant half-structures as markers of transition rather than tombstones. The true mystery isn't why they left, but why we assume they saw it as an ending at all. In their unfinished walls, we might be reading not failure but flexibility, a civilization that knew when to build and when to walk away. Deep in the heart of Mohenjo-daro, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest coastline, archaeologists uncovered heaps of meticulously cut seashells, tens of thousands of them stacked like currency in workshop corners. These weren't random souvenirs from beachside vacations. They were raw materials being transformed into bangles, beads, and intricate inlays, their mother-of-pearl surfaces polished to a luminous sheen. The shells tell an improbable story, that a landlocked city in the Bronze Age maintained what amounted to an oceanic supply chain, orchestrating the movement of delicate marine treasures across deserts, rivers, and mountains with flawless precision. The logistics defy belief. These particular shells, turbans, conches, and spiny oysters came exclusively from coastal waters over 800 kilometers away in Gujarat and the Makran. Chemical analysis reveals even more astonishing details. Some shells originated near modern-day Bahrain, meaning they traveled over 2,000 kilometers before reaching Harappan workshops. This wasn't occasional trade, it was industrialized procurement on a staggering scale. Picture caravans of pack animals or riverboats navigating treacherous routes, their cargoes of fragile shells protected by layers of damp cloth to prevent cracking, a Bronze Age version of climate-controlled shipping. What's truly baffling is the uniformity of the end products. Excavations from Rakhigarhi to Dolavira reveal shell bangles with near-identical widths and curvature, suggesting standardized manufacturing templates spread across the civilization. Some workshops even show evidence of mass production, with shell fragments sorted by size like modern assembly line components. The level of coordination implies more than just entrepreneurial traders. It hints at a system where artisans in distant cities followed shared technical manuals, despite having never seen the ocean their materials came from. But the enigma goes deeper than transport. These shells weren't just pretty trinkets, they held profound cultural meaning. Many bear deliberate perforations or carved motifs resembling later Hindu tantric symbols. At Kalibangan, fired clay tablets depict women wearing stacks of shell bangles up to their elbows, possibly marking life stages or social status. The most haunting finds come from burials where infants were interred wearing tiny shell rings, their pearlescent surfaces still gleaming after millennia. This wasn't mere decoration, it was a spiritual language written in calcium carbonate. The real question isn't how they moved the shells, but why they went to such length. Unlike rare metals or gemstones, seashells were renewable resources. Any coastal community could gather them. The answer might lie in the Indus people's obsession with hydrological symbolism. Just as their cities mirrored cosmic order through precise geometry, shells born from the sacred interface of land and sea may have embodied their worldview. By bringing the ocean inland, they weren't just trading goods, they were stitching geography into a unified cultural tapestry. What's heartbreaking is the fragility they couldn't overcome. As the civilization declined, shell workshops grew fewer, their products cruder. The last generations resorted to recycling, grinding old bangles into paste for new creations. Eventually, even that knowledge faded, leaving behind mountains of shell debris as silent witnesses to a network that once connected desert and ocean with invisible threads of commerce and belief. Today, those broken fragments gleam in museum cases not just as artifacts, but as reminders of how even the most resilient systems are built on relationships we barely understand. While Egypt's pharaohs erected colossal statues of themselves to loom over subjects for eternity, and Mesopotamian kings commissioned towering reliefs of their military conquests, the Indus Valley tells a startlingly different story. Walk through their ruins and you'll find no grand statues, no temples adorned with larger-than-life deities, not even a single inscription celebrating a ruler's achievements. This absence isn't an accident, it's a cultural statement carved by omission, revealing a civilization that invested in the invisible over the monumental, in collective well-being over individual glorification. The contrast couldn't be starker. In Giza, workers hauled 2.5-ton blocks to build a pharaoh's tomb, while in Ur, artisans chiseled victory stelae documenting slaughtered enemies. Meanwhile, Indus engineers quietly perfected sewer systems that serviced every household equally. Their priorities were etched not in stone, but in clay uniform bricks, ensuring sturdy homes, not palaces, drainage channels prioritizing public health, not propaganda. Even their largest structures, like Mohenjo-daro's Great Bath, served practical or possibly spiritual functions rather than celebrating power. The message is clear. Here was a society that measured greatness not by the height of its statues, but by the depth of its shared infrastructure. What makes this divergence even more intriguing is the artistic skill they clearly possessed. The tiny dancing girl bronze proves they could craft lifelike figures, while intricate seals display masterful miniature artistry. They chose not to scale these talents upward, rejecting the megalomaniacal art that defined their contemporaries. Some scholars interpret this as egalitarianism, a culture distrustful of personality cults. Others see a pragmatic focus. Why waste labor on statues when resources could build flood barriers or granaries? The most compelling theory suggests their values were simply orthogonal to those of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Where those civilizations sought to conquer time with stone, the Indus people may have embraced impermanence, investing instead in systems that improved daily life for all. The lack of monumental art forces us to confront our own biases. We're conditioned to associate advanced civilizations with pyramids and ziggurats, but the Indus Valley's legacy, millennia-old plumbing that still puts modern infrastructure to shame, challenges that hierarchy. Their art was a city that functioned like clockwork, their monuments the quiet genius of a brick lined well or a standardized weight. In this light, their emptiness speaks louder than any statue ever could. Among the most puzzling structures unearthed in Calibangan and Lothal are rows of rectangular brick platforms, their surfaces blackened and cracked from intense heat. At first glance, they resemble industrial furnaces, perhaps for firing pottery or smelting metal, but look closer and the arrangement tells a different story. These platforms sit in precise alignment with celestial events, their ashes containing traces of sacrificial offerings, sesame seeds, fragrant woods, even animal bones. This discovery ignited one of archaeology's fiercest debates. Were these the sacred fire altars of a forgotten religion, utilitarian kilns repurposed by later cultures, or evidence of something far more enigmatic? Proponents of the ritual theory point to the altar's architectural symbolism. At Calibangan, 7 fire pits sit in a perfect north-south line, mirroring the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, a constellation revered in later Vedic traditions. The bricks themselves follow sacred ratios seen in Hindu yajna altars built millennia afterward. Even the residue tells a story. Gas chromatography revealed traces of clarified butter and medicinal herbs identical to those used in ancient Ayurvedic ceremonies. Most telling, the absence of slag or metal fragments typically left by industrial processes. These fires weren't melting ore, they were transmitting prayers. Yet skeptics highlight contradictory evidence. At Lothal, similar platforms sit alongside craft workshops, their floors littered with pottery shards and failed ceramic experiments. Some show signs of extreme, sustained heat temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, consistent with kilns firing glazed tiles. There's also the matter of scale. A cluster of 12 altars at Baniwali would have required an entire forest's worth of ritual fuel, yet no nearby settlements show evidence of such deforestation. Could these have been communal baking pits or salt extraction sites, their spiritual significance projected backward by later interpreters? The most radical theory merges both perspectives. Modern metallurgists note that the altar's alternating layers of clay and sand created thermal properties ideal for metal purification, a technique still used in traditional Indian gold refining. Ancient texts describe rituals where fire transformed base metals into spiritual gold, blurring the line between metallurgy and mysticism. Perhaps the Indus people saw no contradiction between industry and worship. A furnace tempering bronze might simultaneously have been a portal to the divine, its flames both tool and sacrament. This duality echoes in later Hindu practices, where temple lamps are lit with clarified butter used industrially as lamp oil, and sacred fires purify both metal and soul. The altar's enduring mystery isn't just about their function, but about how seamlessly the Indus people may have woven technology and transcendence into a single act. Their silent bricks refuse to be categorized, challenging our modern divisions between the practical and the sacred. In their cracked surfaces, we glimpse a world where every flame held multitudes forging tools, offerings, and possibly even enlightenment. Scattered across the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, archaeologists keep uncovering tiny treasures, miniature clay carts no larger than a child's palm, complete with detachable axles and rolling wheels, herds of brittle terracotta animals with worn, polished surfaces from endless handling, even minuscule spinning tops and whistles that still produce sounds after 4,000 years. At first glance, these seem like simple playthings, echoes of childhood echoing across millennia. But the closer we examine them, the more they blur the line between toy and talisman, between education and ritual. Take the iconic bull carts, these fragile replicas, some pulled by humped zebu bulls, others by mysterious horned creatures, mirror full-sized counterparts used for transporting goods. Were they teaching tools, helping children learn the importance of domesticated animals in their agricultural society? Or do their precise anatomical details, the curve of each horn, the musculature of the shoulders, suggest something more ceremonial? In later Hindu traditions, miniature carts carried deity idols during festivals. Could these have been early prototypes of sacred processions? The wear patterns tell a story. Some show smooth grooves where tiny ropes once wrapped around their axles, evidence of actual use rather than static offerings. Then there's the menagerie of animal figurines, dogs with perked ears, monkeys mid-scamper, even squirrels caught forever in mid-nibble. Unlike the stiff, symbolic creatures adorning Mesopotamian temples, these pulse with lifelike energy. One particularly endearing find from Mohenjo-daro depicts a mother pig with a row of suckling piglets beneath her, a scene so precisely observed. It could only have been crafted by someone who'd watched real swine nurture their young. The educational intention seems clear, passing knowledge of animal behavior to the next generation. But why are so many found broken near hearths or buried under thresholds? Did they serve as protective charms, their destruction symbolizing some forgotten rite of passage? The most haunting clues come from the toy's unintended features. Microscopic analysis reveals tiny teeth marks on some figurines, actual indentations from children's bites. Others bear fingerprints so small they could only belong to toddlers pressing doughy clay between curious fingers. These visceral traces transform abstract artifacts into intimate snapshots. A child's sticky hands shaping a clumsy buffalo, a parent patiently attaching wheels to a cart, generations bonding over shared play. Yet the mystery lingers in the outliers. A cache of flying bird whistles from Lothal produce distinct pitches when blown, potentially mimicking actual bird calls for hunting training. At Oliveira, a set of cube-shaped dice with drilled dots suggests early board games, challenging assumptions about leisure in antiquity. Most perplexing are the jointed dolls with movable limbs, their design startlingly similar to later Indian string puppets used in religious storytelling. Were these the Bronze Age equivalent of Sunday school props, teaching mythologies through play? What emerges isn't just a collection of toys, but a window into how the Indus people conceptualized childhood itself. Unlike Egypt's elite, who buried children with miniature servants for the afterlife, or Mesopotamia's child laborers pressed into early work, the Indus Valley seems to have nurtured a distinct space for play, not as frivolous distraction, but as sacred preparation. Their toys weren't afterthoughts, they were foundational tools, shaping minds to sustain a civilization where even the youngest hands had a role to mold. The real revelation isn't that they played, but how deeply they understood that play itself is a kind of magic, transforming clay into cattle, imagination into inheritance, and fleeting moments into echoes that outlast empires. Beneath the orderly streets of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa ran a hidden wonder, a labyrinth of brick-lined drains so advanced they wouldn't be matched until the 19th century. While London and Paris still dumped waste into open gutters 2,000 years later, Indus engineers had perfected an underground network combining gravity, geometry, and startling foresight. Picture this: main sewer lines wide enough for a person to crawl through, sloped at precise angles to maintain self-cleaning flow, with inspection manholes at regular intervals. But the true genius lies in the details, each house connected to the system through terracotta pipes with tapered joints to prevent leaks, while street drains featured curved sedimentation traps to catch debris before it clogged the channels. This wasn't just sanitation, it was hydraulic ballet. What's even more remarkable is the evidence of mathematical intent behind the layouts. Archaeologists mapping Mohenjo-daro's drains noticed something peculiar. The angles of branching pipes consistently follow ratios mirroring the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern found in natural growth forms like seashells and sunflowers. The gradient of each segment isn't arbitrary either. Calculations show they adhered to a standardized slope of approximately 2 degrees, optimal for maintaining water velocity without erosion. Some researchers proposed the entire system was planned using an early form of fractal geometry, with smaller neighborhood drains mirroring the proportions of larger city-wide channels. The sophistication extends to maintenance features. At Harappa, certain junctions have removable brick baffles, early flow control gates allowing sections to be isolated for cleaning. Drain covers are no afterthought. Their wedge-shaped designs distribute weight evenly, preventing collapse under cart traffic. Even the placement of cesspits reveals forethought, positioned downwind of residences and lined with absorbent clay to minimize odors. Yet the greatest mystery isn't how they built it, but why no contemporary civilization came close. While Egypt's pyramid builders focused on monumental deathscapes and Mesopotamia's ziggurats scraped the sky, the Indus people invested in the invisible, prioritizing public health over propaganda. Their sewers whisper a radical philosophy that a civilization's greatness might be measured not by what it displays, but by what it conceals. The ghostly brick tunnels still lying beneath the ruins aren't just engineering feats, they're the physical manifestation of a society that valued collective well-being as the highest art. Mesopotamian clay tablets from around 2100 BC tell a peculiar story, one that hints at a mystery buried deeper than the ruins of Ur or Mohenjo-daro. For centuries, these records mention thriving trade with a distant land called Meluha, where ships arrived laden with ivory, lapis lazuli, and exotic woods. Then, abruptly, the references cease. No grand farewell, no recorded conflict, just silence. This vanishing act didn't align with the traditional timeline of the Indus Valley's decline, which historians place closer to 1900 BC. Here's the puzzle. Why did their trade networks collapse centuries before their cities emptied? The answer might rewrite our understanding of how civilizations unravel, not with a single catastrophic event, but through a slow fraying of invisible threads. The evidence lies in the details of those last Mesopotamian trade logs. Earlier invoices describe Meluhan goods arriving with predictable regularity, carnelian beads strung in precise patterns, timbers cut to standardized length. But toward the end, the records grow erratic. A shipment of ivory arrives stained with salt water, suggesting rushed or improvised transport. Ordered weights of lapis lazuli come slightly under measure, as if suppliers were stretching dwindling reserves. Most telling, the disappearance of the Indus seals themselves, those intricate animal-stamped clay tags that once guaranteed authenticity. In their place, Mesopotamian merchants begin noting Meluhan-style goods, implying knockoffs produced locally or through intermediaries. The handwriting is on the wall. The Indus trade machine was breaking down long before its cities did. What could have disrupted such a robust network? Climate data offers one clue. Sediment cores from the Arabian Sea reveal a spike in aridity around 2200 BC, the same era the trade faltered. This drought wouldn't have just parched farmland. It would have lowered river levels, making the overland routes to Mesopotamian ports nearly impassable for laden caravans. At the site of Ras Al Jins in Oman, where Indus goods were transshipped, archaeologists found docks suddenly abandoned, their timbers still stacked for repairs that never came. Yet there's another, more unsettling possibility. The last genuine Indus seals found in Mesopotamia bear strange anomalies. Their motifs slightly distorted, their script characters oddly spaced. Some scholars interpret this as evidence of a loss of central quality control, as if the artisan guilds overseeing production had disbanded. Others see something more deliberate, economic sabotage. A few tablets from mention Meluhan intermediaries accused of adulterating goods. Were opportunistic middlemen exploiting a weakening system, or was this the symptom of a deeper social fracture within the Indus heartland itself? The most haunting finds come from the coastal city of Lothal. Here, in workshops that once mass-produced beads for export, unfinished batches lie scattered beside polishing tools as if workers walked away mid-shift. The kilns, which fired thousands of ceramic vessels for overseas shipments, show no signs of catastrophic destruction, just gradual disuse. It's a scene mirrored in Mesopotamia's port cities, where Meluhan warehouses were repurposed for grain storage, their original content slowly forgotten. This staggered collapse challenges the traditional narrative of a singular fall. Instead, it paints a picture of a civilization losing its connective tissue first, the trade routes that distributed not just goods but ideas, technologies, and cultural cohesion. By the time the Gaga-Hakra River dried up and the cities emptied, the Indus world had already become a shadow of itself, its influence shrinking like a receding tide. The trade routes didn't vanish because the civilization collapsed. The collapse began when the routes vanished. Perhaps the real lesson lies in what these silences tell us about interdependence. The Indus people didn't just trade commodities, they traded trust, the unspoken promise that a zebu seal from Harappan meant a consistent weight, that a lapis shipment would match the sample. When that trust eroded, the network fractured long before the bricks crumbled. Their greatest achievement wasn't the goods they moved, but the invisible system that made the movement possible. And its failure reveals how fragile even the mightiest civilizations can be when their connections weaken. The Mesopotamians stopped writing about Meluha not because it ceased to exist, but because it ceased to matter. And that, in its own quiet way, is the most devastating collapse of all. The ruins of the Indus Valley don't just whisper of collapse, they scream with contradictions. One layer of sediment shows parched earth, the next reveals sudden floods. Skeletons bear no sword wounds, yet citadel gates stand hastily reinforced. This isn't a murder mystery with a single culprit. It's a mosaic of disasters where every theory shines light on one piece while leaving others in shadow. Let's walk through the competing explanations as archaeologists do, holding each up to the light, weighing its brilliance against its blind spots. Start with climate change, the most pervasive suspect. Geological cores from the Gagga-Hakra riverbed read like an obituary. Once mighty waterways reduced to trickles, then dust. Oxygen isotope analyses of ancient teeth confirm prolonged droughts around 1900 BC, coinciding with the city's abandonment. But here's the wrinkle: settlements like Dolivera thrived centuries longer by engineering colossal reservoirs. If climate was the executioner, why didn't it strike equally? The answer may lie in microclimates. Recent pollen studies show the Indus heartland suffered localized megadroughts while eastern fringes enjoyed stable rains. A civilization built on hydrological precision couldn't withstand such patchwork collapse. Then there's the controversial Aryan migration theory. Ancient Hindu texts like the Rig Veda describe horse-riding warriors conquering walled cities, while genetic studies reveal Central Asian ancestry appearing in South Asian genomes around this era. Excavations at Bhagwanpura show crude, post-Harappan pottery layered over sophisticated Indus ruins, a cultural palimpsest suggesting invasion, yet critical gaps remain. Where are the mass graves or raised buildings? Why do later Vedic traditions adopt Indus symbols like the Pashupati seal if this was a hostile takeover? The truth may be messier than outright war, perhaps a slow assimilation, where climate-weakened cities succumb to pastoralist groups through intermarriage and shifting power dynamics. Disease offers another grim possibility. At Farmana, archaeologists uncovered a burial pit with 34 bodies dumped haphazardly, an anomaly in a civilization known for orderly graves. Paleopathologists identified lesions on the bones consistent with epidemics like cholera or malaria. The timing aligns with a little-known global climate event called the 4.2 kiloyear drought, which triggered disease migrations across Eurasia. But where's the smoking gun? No Indus medical text survived to confirm outbreaks, and skeletal evidence remains too sparse to prove pandemic-scale mortality. Perhaps the most unsettling theory isn't about external forces at all, but internal decay. The late-period archaeological record reveals a society fraying at its edges. Standardized weights begin varying by region as if central authority eroded. Shell ornaments grow cruder, suggesting artisan guilds disbanded. Most tellingly, the script already cryptic degenerates into illegible scratches on pottery. This points to a collapse not from invasion or drought, but from lost cohesion. Imagine a civilization so specialized that when trade networks faltered, knowledge systems fragmented like dropped porcelain. The real revelation isn't which theory is right, but how they intertwine. Climate stress may have sparked migration, which brought disease, which accelerated social unraveling. A domino effect where no single push was fatal, but the cumulative weight became unbearable. The Indus people didn't vanish, they transformed, dispersing into villages where their urban genius lived on in subtle ways. In the precise brick ratios of later Indian temples, in the hydraulic wisdom passed down to Mauryan engineers, even in the yogic postures echoing their seal carvings. Their collapse wasn't an ending, but a metamorphosis, one that challenges us to see fragility and resilience as two sides of the same clay tablet. From the world's first planned cities to the eerie silence of their undeciphered script, the Indus Valley Civilization wasn't just ahead of its time, it defied time entirely. These 30 mysteries reveal a society that rejected the pyramid and palace model of greatness, choosing instead to weave brilliance into the fabric of everyday life. Where Egypt measured power in obelisks and Mesopotamia in conquests, the Indus people calibrated their genius in brick ratios and sewer slopes, in weights so precise they still baffle modern metrologists. Their absence of war, their vanishing temples, their refusal to carve kings' faces into stone, these aren't gaps in the record, but deliberate choices whispering across millennia. That advancement need not mean oppression, that order doesn't require tyranny. What lingers isn't just what we've found, but what we're still missing. How did they coordinate across continents without leaving a single royal decree? Why devote centuries to perfecting cotton textiles but not a single line of boastful poetry? Every answer unearthed, whether it's the celestial math hidden in their seals or the apocalyptic clues in their abandoned workshops, only deepens the wonder. This civilization challenges our deepest assumptions about what makes a society successful, proving that monuments crumble, but a well-laid drain can outlast empires. Now it's your turn. Which mystery pulls you deepest into the labyrinth? The dancing girl who defies 4,000 years with her insolent grace, the great bath that might have been a temple, a spa, or something we've yet to imagine. Or the ghostly Saraswati River, whose waters might still hide lost cities beneath the dunes. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone, and if these enigmas have left you hungry for more, don't worry. This is just the beginning. From the submerged ruins of Dwarka to the riddles of the Cucuteni Tripilia culture, our next adventures in ancient puzzles are already waiting. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, sometimes the most profound truths aren't shouted from pedestals, but whispered through the cracks in a well-laid